Greetings. Today I received some very good information. The Albert Pike statue in Washington, D.C., toppled in 2020 during protest, is now officially scheduled to be restored and reinstalled by the National Park Service this month of 2025. The question is, why are you hearing this first by the Cornish Temple and not the Scottish Rite? This restoration is part of the Federal Historic Preservation's responsibility, ensuring that the physical history is preserved, including figures like Pike, whose contributions to law, philosophy, and Freemasonry are undeniable. The statue, which had been vandalized and toppled, is now undergoing careful restoration, as the message states. Crews are repairing the statue's masonry base, mounting elements, and ensuring that it can once again stand as it originally did. It is emphasized that this work is about historical accuracy and preservation. The reinstallation is significant. It signals that history cannot simply be erased, and that monuments, whether controversial or revered, hold lessons about our past. For the bloodline and me, it is a moment to acknowledge that Pike's contributions are being recognized again, even after decades of misunderstanding. However, while the restoration is happening, there are still voices seeking to undermine Pike's legacy. Notably, the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction, the organization historically responsible for his enshrinement, publicly stated that the statue should be taken down during the 2020 COVID, and I demonstrated that on a previous video. I showed a copy of the memorandum. This is significant because it comes from the very group that claims to honor and protect Pike's memory. Despite their public statement, they proceed with the restoration. The restoration is ongoing, emphasizing historical preservation. This action ensures that Pike's place in American history and the symbolism of his contribution to philosophy is not lost. As a descendant, I must also bring attention to the broader context. Pike's last will and testament requested a simple, unmarked burial. In 1944, the Scottish Rite moved his remains into the House of the Temple in a permanent sarcophagus against his wishes. This was the early instance where his legacy was shaped by others rather than by his own instructions. Furthermore, when the statue was toppled in 2020, mercenary officers were present, observing passively for over 45 minutes. And again, in the previous demonstration, I have the video of them just sitting there letting it happen without intervening. I will display an image of that moment. The failure to uphold law enforcement policies protecting public monuments allowed the destruction to occur unchecked, highlighting a pattern of neglect around Pike's memorials. It is also important to remember that Albert Pike was pardoned by President Andrew Johnson in 1866 for acts during the Civil War that I have also proved now was not true. That pardon once again helped secure all his rights and morally should have protected his reputation from attacks. Yet public statements labeling him disgraceful and their prior destruction of his statue contradict both the pardon and the moral respect owed to him. This brings us to the core of my message today. The statue is returning. The reinstallation is a restoration not only of bronze and stone, but of historical recognition. It reminds us that history is complex, and oftentimes those that they wish to attack, if you would just take a deeper look, you would find that they are honorable. Figures like Pike cannot be reduced to simple labels, and that descendants and historians alike have the right and responsibility to ensure the truth is not lost. In conclusion, the return of the statue is a victory for history. It allows us to re-examine Pike's contributions, understand the context of his life, and honor his legacy properly. At the same time, we must acknowledge the contradictions and misrepresentations that have occurred. The Scottish Rite's participation in the memorandum calling for removal, the failure of law enforcement, and public attacks on his reputation, all those actions were contrary to the law, the pardon, and moral respect owed to my forefather. So the day that Albert Pike's statue stands again publicly, if the Scottish Rite is there in ceremony, you know that they are liars and they are contradicting. As his descendant, I stand here to assert that these acts cannot erase the truth. Pike's contributions remain part of our history. His pardon still protects his reputation, and the reinstallation of his statue is an opportunity for all to engage with the full complexity of history. Thank you for listening. I urge you to reflect on this restoration, to consider both the accomplishments and controversies of history, and to respect the legacy of those like Albert Pike, whose lives continue to teach us about law, philosophy, and moral responsibility. I leave you in love and peace.